I'm Shahzaib, the president of the Pakistani Society at University of Sydney, and also the assistant coordinator of the South Asia Study Group. And on behalf of PAKSOC and the South Asia Study Group, I would like to welcome you all to this event, a conversation with Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. Before we begin proceedings, I would like to acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional owners of this land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. As you all probably know, Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is a multi-award-winning documentary filmmaker. Recently, she completed work on 4 feature documentaries, Songs of Lahore and A Girl in the River, The Price of Forgiveness. The Oscar-winning documentary which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and is currently showing at the Sydney Film Festival. In the past 15 years, she has made over a dozen award-winning films in over 10 countries. In 2012, Time magazine included Sharmeen in the annual list of the 100 most influential people in the world. That same year, the Pakistan government awarded her a Nali Imtiaz for her work in the field of arts. So more recently, the Asia Society in New York honored her with an Asia Game Changer Award in 2014, which recognized 12 individuals making a positive difference for the future of Asia. Therefore, without further ado, please welcome Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy.
Good morning, everyone. I know it's exam time, so thank you so much for coming out. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about how I got into documentary filmmaking. So I was born and raised in Karachi, Pakistan, and my earliest memory of anger was when I was 10 years old. I remember going to school, and my car had stopped at a traffic light, and I looked out of the window and I saw a young girl who was roughly my age, except she was barefoot and her nose was pressed against the car window, and she was begging. And I remember very vividly that I felt this sense of anger, that why is it that I am in the car and she is outside the car? And so I'm told now that I was quite an angry young woman, that I would ask very difficult questions at home and at school. And so my parents got very tired of answering these questions about why and what and why is society like this, and why do I have to dress like this, or why are boys allowed to do this and why are girls not allowed to do this. So I finally said, you know what, channel this anger and do something positive with it. So at the age of 14, I started writing for newspapers in Pakistan. This is a time when there is no cell phone and there is no email. So I was writing for Dawn, which is the largest English language newspaper, and I was writing in the articles and mailing them off to Dawn. So by the time I was 17 years old, I was doing investigative journalism. At that time, Dawn had a magazine called the Tuesday Review, and I was doing cover stories for them. Mind you, my editor didn't know that a 17-year-old was actually doing these. So he assigned me a story that I had pitched him about the children of feudal lords. So people in Karachi that were involved in extreme bullying. So these children they were basically teenagers, but they would kidnap other boys for 5-6 hours. We're talking about the 90s. Shave their head, if there was an event taking place, go outside it with their big guns and start firing. And this is the time when Karachi just started to see an infiltration of guns. And so when that article came out, it was the morning of Eid, which is the Muslim holiday, and everything was closed, and my father was going off to say his prayers. And I often used to get into trouble for things I did. So he came back and I could hear him screaming through the house, and clearly my name was being screamed. And I knew that I was in trouble instantly. I just didn't know what I was in trouble for. And the boys I had written about had spray painted my name and my family's name across our gate, boundary wall, and spray painted things that are difficult to even articulate. And on the road, we lived about 2 blocks from the mosque, and I knew my father would go to the mosque. So all the way up to the mosque, and it was done to shame my family so that I would stop writing about these kind of things. Later, one of those boys very proudly told me that it was done to silence me. So I thought that, at the age of 17, my father was going to tell me, well, you know what, you don't need to do any of this stuff. Especially because I came from a fairly conservative family, and except he said something to me, as he was screaming at me, he looked at me and he said, "If you speak the truth, I will stand with you, and so will the world." And my father found my cousins and some family members, got a shop opened, bought some cans of paint, and had the walls whitewashed. For a 17-year-old girl to see that happen is a very strong statement. For any young woman that is trying to find her voice, to have a support of a father who does that at a very young age means a lot. And that's when I knew that I could always challenge the status quo and ask difficult questions, and someone would have my back. So I went to America to get an education after successfully going on a hunger strike for 36 hours because my father didn't want me to go to America. I had gotten into Smith College and I really wanted to go. So when he said no because the girls in our family didn't go to college abroad, I went on a hunger strike. Subsequently, I won and I did end up going. And when I was in America, I graduated, and that's when I began my career in documentary filmmaking. My first few films are about Afghanistan. The war in Afghanistan had just started at that time. And I did a number of films about Afghan refugee children that were infiltrating, that had left Afghanistan and were in Pakistan, and I was talking about the difficulties that children face in war. Over the years, I have talked about issues that make people deeply uncomfortable in Pakistan. But I believe that the true sign of democracy is if you talk about issues, because our issues are not going to go away if you just hide them. And we've had enormous success in starting difficult conversations. For those of you, and even Pakistanis, because I have this whole thing about how Pakistanis know some of my work but not all of my work, I'm going to show you some of my work. I have been making a series of documentary films on men and women that you know nothing about, but that are facing adverse circumstances and really working on the grassroots level to create change in the country. So these films, many of these films have won massive awards around the world, not the Oscars, but other awards. I'm going to start off by showing you something I did about polio in Pakistan. So polio, unfortunately, still affects people in Pakistan, and the most incredible champions of polio are women in the country who literally risk their lives for $2 a day to vaccinate children across the country. Many of them have been brutally gunned down, and you never hear their stories and why they do what they do. So I'm going to introduce you to Naseem Akhtar. I had the good fortune of spending a lot of time with her. Naseem is an inspirational woman, and she, to me, epitomizes all of those Pakistanis that are beyond the headlines.
आप लोग सब रेडी हैं, टेली शीटें हैं सबके हाथ में। मेरी बात गौर से सुनो। देखो, जिस इलाके में हम जा रहे हैं वो आपको पता है कि ये एरिया कितना डेंजर है, ख़तरनाक है ना। तो आप लोग घबराना नहीं है, डरना नहीं है। बाइक वाला आ जाए तो इधर उधर भागना नहीं है। बिल्कुल आपको अपने काम पे तवज्जो रखनी है। सीधा वहाँ नहीं, सीधा सीधा वो इलाका करना है। सीधा चलो और थोड़ा स्पीड से चलें आप लोग।
जो लेडी हेल्थ वर्कर हैं वो हमारे हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट में रीढ़ की हड्डी का किरदार अदा करती हैं।
वैक्सीन फ़ौरन अंदर रखें। आ जाए, दरवाजे खटकाना।
जब पोलियो वर्कर्स पे पहला अटैक 18 दिसंबर को हुआ और मेरी 2 वर्कर को शहीद किया गया, एक खौफ बैठ गया कि इतने बच्चों को माजूरी से बचाने जाते हैं तो उसका सिला हमें ये मिला कि हमारी एक वर्कर जो 250 रुपये पर डे लेती है उसको मारा गया।
बच्चे हैं छोटे।
अब ये इस तरह पोलियो होता है कि हम सिक्योरिटी के साथ जाते हैं। इतनी पतली गलियां होती हैं कि अगर मैं उसमें से अंदर चली जाऊं, वापसी का रास्ता कहाँ से, ये गलियां कहाँ ख़त्म होंगी। तो मेरी नज़र आगे तक होती है कि वहाँ से कोई बाइक तो अंदर नहीं आई या कोई मशकूक तो नहीं है।
ये आगे की तरफ है पुलिस वाले।
बिल्कुल ओपनली मुझे थ्रेड मिले। एक जेंट साहब, आप तो इतनी सिक्योरिटी लेकर आ रही हो तो इससे क्या होगा, हम तो खुद कश धमाके करते हैं।
मुस्तकिल लॉक आ रहे हैं ना, पिछले वाली डेट से भी लॉक है।
लोगों के रवैयों में चेंज आएगा। ये
लेकर आए ना, लेकर आए, वो रह जाएगी ना बच्ची।
कहीं ऐसा नहीं कि ये तो पोलियो के कतरे पिलाकर अपने इलाकों में वापस चले जाएंगे, कहीं हमारे ऊपर भी अटैक ना हो।
आपके माइंड में क्या है मतलब, तो हम क्लियर करेंगे ना कि आप क्यों नहीं पिलाते। अच्छा मजहबी मतलब वो मोले, तो आपने ये 0 डोज वाले हैं, इन्होंने कभी नहीं पिलाया बच्चों को। हाँ
हम 15 साल पोलियो में पीछे चले गए।
शाहज़ैब, ये बेटा दस्तर बिछाओ, नाश्ता लगाओ।
मैंने अपने बच्चों को मेंटली तौर तैयार किया हुआ है कि जो काम मैं कर रही हूँ वो एक मुजाहिद का काम है, और कुछ पता नहीं जिस काम में मैं जा रही हूँ मैं वापस आऊँ या नहीं आऊँ। मेरे बच्चे मुझे मना करते हैं कि मम्मा आप क्यों कर रही हैं, आप नहीं जाओ, देर हो रही है, आ जाओ। क्या खाओगे आप? आयशा को खाना देना, मैं पोलियो में होंगी, देर से आऊँगी, आज भी पोलियो है हमारा, ठीक है।
अम्मी पूरा दिन काम करती है तो इसलिए घर अकेला सा रहता है, महसूस तो होता है। अम्मी की तो बहुत ज़रूरत है, ये मना भी करते हैं कुछ फ्रेंड्स के, ऐसे कैसे काम करती हैं तुम्हारी अम्मी।
जो नेगेटिव माइंड के होते तो वो मना भी करते हैं, क्योंकि पर ये तो जॉब है और लेडीज़ कोई जॉब करे तो इसमें कोई बुरी बात नहीं है, तो इस वजह से मैं ये पूरी इग्नोर कर देता हूँ।
वैसे अक्सर फ़ोन पे अम्मी की बातें वगैरह सुनी है मैंने, हो रही होती हैं, थ्रेड वगैरह मिल रहे होते हैं, पता नहीं किसी से।
और इनको तो पता है, ये जिस दिन वो लड़कियों की डेथ हुई है तो उस दिन फ़ोन करके कहा तो रो रही थी, ये टीवी पे देखा तो मैंने कहा हुआ क्या है बताओ तो सही, तो बोलने लगी आपकी पोलियो में वर्कर को मारे, आप कहाँ पर हो और आप जल्दी घर आ जाओ। तो मैंने कहा मैं ठीक हूँ और मैं आ रही हूँ, गाड़ी में बैठी हूँ। जब पोलियो ख़त्म करके आते हैं तो बच्चों को फिर खुश होकर देखती हूँ कि आज इनके साथ खाना खाऊंगी, आज बच के आ गई हूँ। और मैं हमेशा जब पोलियो में उतरती हूँ मैदान में तो सर को हम ये समझती हूँ कि कफन बांधा हुआ है, इसमें मैं अकेली शामिल नहीं हूँ, मेरे पीछे इतने लोग भी हैं जो मेरी तरह बहादुर हैं। इतने खूबसूरत बच्चे जो वज़ीरस्तान, अफ़गानिस्तान, सवाल से आए होते हैं, कंची आँखों वाले देखकर हमारा खौफ ख़त्म हो जाता है। हम बोलते हैं इस बच्चे को मैं माजूरी से बचा रही हूँ, अगर इस पर मेरी जान चली भी गई तो कोई बात नहीं।
साए में पिलाएं इसको। 5 साल से छोटे बच्चे कितने हैं आपके घर में?
तो हम ये उन पैसों के लिए 250 रुपये के लिए नहीं पिला रहे हैं, हमने इसको अपना एक मिशन बना लिया है कि पाकिस्तान को पोलियो फ्री करेंगे और इन बच्चों को इस माजूरी से बचाएंगे।
I spent a lot of time with Naseem Akhtar, walking the streets of Karachi in very, very dangerous areas where going on foot was not advisable. And she was one of the most inspirational women I had ever met, actually, because she was just very matter-of-fact about it. Every time we would go and film her and she was leaving the house, she would say to me, you know, I don't know if I'm going to come back home today. And I remember getting the call that Naseem Akhtar had been shot, and I thought that she had been shot in a polio incident. And she had been shot because her husband thought that she was getting too independent. And you know, this film was shown at the UN earlier this year, and one of the points of showing this film was to show that there is not just one Naseem Akhtar in Pakistan. There are countless Naseem Akhtars that we don't know about. Many of her colleagues have continued her work. She is just one of those incredible women. Liari, for those people who know Karachi, Liari is supposed to be one of the most dangerous areas of the country. A neighborhood infested with gang violence, infested with drugs, infested with political parties trying to jostle one another. And in 2012, I was filming in Liari and I came across a story that to me epitomized how Pakistan can change its education system completely.
कचरे तो उठा लो जाने, स्वेटर पहनो, कितनी सर्दी है। Assalamualaikum. How are you? What are you painting? What are you doing today? Hi Jani, how are you? छोटे बच्चों को देखकर हमेशा मैं ये सोचती हूँ कि जो उनकी ये नेचर आज बनी है, ज़रूर उसके पीछे कोई ना कोई इन्वायरमेंट का असर है।
जैसे अगर कोई क्रिमिनल बन गया तो क्यों बना, उसकी चाइल्डहुड में क्या हुआ था, ये चीज़ हमेशा से मुझे इंटरेस्ट करती थी।
Okay, let's all say what's inside the box.
What's inside the box?
Can you guess?
सबीना कतरी पिछले 5 साल से लियारी में स्कूल चला रही हैं।
Can an elephant get inside this box?
मेरे यहाँ किरण स्कूल में होने में बहुत बड़ा हाथ मेरे ब्रदर इन लॉ का है। उन्होंने स्कूल की बुनियाद आज से 14 साल पहले डाली थी। देखकर मैंने ये रियलाइज़ किया कि नहीं, कुछ करना होगा ज़रूर यहाँ, और जब तक मैं खुद इन्वॉल्व नहीं होंगी वो चेंज नहीं आएगा। किरण स्कूल में हम लियारी के सारे ज़हीन और काबिल बच्चों को जमा करके इकट्ठा करते हैं एक जगह, और उनको फिर हम इस लेवल पे पढ़ाते हैं कि वो मेरिट्स पे उन स्कूल्स में चले जाएं जहाँ का वो तसव्वुर भी नहीं कर सकते।
Now Sabina's students are in some of the best private schools in the country. They're 13, 14 years old, class 7 and 8. They're going to be graduating, going on to do their O-levels and hopefully their A-levels. The parents of these children are illiterate. They're day laborers. Some of them work in domestic households as cleaners. The children speak fluent English. Can tell you things about geography, history and science that put everyone to shame. They play football in the evenings. What she has done has been a social experiment. She has taken a school in Mo and taken some of the finest kids from that area and converted them into becoming very similar to and having the same kind of education that you and I sitting here have had. When these children, and there are about, now I think about 40 of them, when they graduate and go back to their communities, and none of them want to leave Liari. When they go back, they will essentially, literally change the neighborhood that they'll go back to. So as many of you know, I have this special affinity to women because I make a lot of films about them. A few years ago, I was working on bonded labor in Pakistan and looking at how, especially in the province of Punjab in the country, where hundreds of thousands of families have been enslaved, and there is a big system of modern-day slavery in the country. A woman I met who had been shot 3 times. Her brother has been shot. My team found her and spent a lot of time with her. I'm going to show you a clip that epitomizes bravery and the kind of bravery that few of us would dare to have in a country like Pakistan.
Despite being attacked, Fatma remains determined to achieve her goal.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी, आप इधर क्या आपकी है हैसियत, पोजीशन, मालिक हैं, क्या हैं? मुंशी हैं। आप मुंशी हैं। यहाँ पर एक मजदूर को आपने मारा, यहाँ कमरे में लिटा के मारा, कुछ छितर बना हुआ है यहाँ पड़ा हुआ है।
ये आपको बात किसने बताई?
उसी मजदूर ने। ये कौन सा कानून है? ये जंगल में रहते हैं, हम इंसानों में नहीं रहते।
क्या हमारा हक नहीं है?
नहीं,
हम पैसे जो देते हैं।
क्यों देते हैं?
आप जो है ना हमारे काम को डिस्टर्ब कर रही हैं।
नहीं, मैं नहीं डिस्टर्ब कर रही, मैं नहीं डिस्टर्ब कर रही, मैंने तो उनको वो आ गए हैं।
तो आप कह दें ये कारोबार मत करो, हमें कह दें।
नहीं, आप करें, लेकिन ऐसा कारोबार नहीं करें जिसमें आप लोगों को मारपीट करें।
चलो भी चल, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ कोई काम नहीं गए थे, निकलो।
हम यहाँ पे
कोई बंदा साढ़े लागे ना लगे।
अगर आपने बंद नहीं किया तो तोड़ना पड़ेगा।
साहब मेरी बात सुने, नहीं आप गलत काम नहीं कर रहे हैं। आप जैसे पढ़े लिखे लोग ये इस तरह की बात करें।
अच्छा, इस तरह आराम से बात करें।
हमने आपके साथ
अच्छा, चुप कर जाए बेटा।
मैं नहीं चुप करती, कराया मुझे चुप। मैं आपकी गुलाम नहीं हूँ। यहाँ मजदूरों को आप बंद करके मारते हैं, मैं आपकी गुलाम नहीं हूँ।
कौन सा बंदा मारा है बताएं आप। मैं ये जो काम कर रहा हूँ, ये इतने लोगों का रोजगार लगा हुआ है, आप इस रोजगार को क्यों खराब कर रहे हैं?
आप मुझे हल्फिया ये कह दें कि आपके इसी भट्टे पे, जिसको आप अपना घर भी कहते हैं, जिसको आपका साथ, यहाँ पे छितर नहीं मारे मजदूर को, तो फिर बात
मैंने ना किसी को मैं आपकी बात को, मैं इस बात से इनहराफ नहीं कर रहा।
इस तरह का वायलेशन और तशद्दुद करने वाला जो बंदा है उसका तो भट्टा सील हो जाना चाहिए और उसका बाकायदा कानून मौजूद है कि जो बंदा ऐसा करेगा उसका भट्टा सील हो जाएगा।
You know, to know that you've been shot, your brother's been shot, her brother moves around with great difficulty, and to continue to do the work that she does. I think some of you may know who she is because when Humans of New York came to Pakistan, they profiled her. We had done a film on her in 2013, and now, of course, she's become a huge hero with what she is doing. One of the largest emergency hospitals wards is run by women in Pakistan. And her story of why she does what she does and what she encounters is one that I feel should be listened to by everybody. Not simply because she is an inspiring woman, but because the things that she goes through in an emergency ward is nothing like any of us could ever imagine.
जिला हॉस्पिटल में मेरे बहुत सारे रोल्स हैं। एक तो मैं यहाँ की जॉइंट डायरेक्टर हूँ और इसके अलावा मैं शोबा हादसात की इंचार्ज भी हूँ। इस वक्त यहाँ पर 1000 मरीज़ रोज़ाना के हिसाब से लाए जाते हैं। इसमें से बेशतर मरीज़ जो हैं क्रिटिकल कंडीशंस में आते हैं। क्या हुआ है बाबा को? कब से नहीं बात कर रहे? मेजर डिज़ास्टर्स और कैटास्ट्रोफीज़ जो हों शहर में, उनको जब फेस करना हो तो मैं सबसे आगे होती हूँ। कराची शहर की सूरत हाल इस वक्त बहुत अच्छी नहीं है। हर वक्त कोई कुछ ना कुछ वाक़यात होते रहते हैं।
अभी जो कराची को निशाना बनाया जाए उसका बेसिकली मकसद ये है,
और क्योंकि ये सेंट्रली लोकेटेड हस्पताल है, किस किस्म के वाक़यात शहर में हो उनका रिपरकशन ज़रूर हस्पताल में होता है। इस वक्त हमारे पास तकरीबन 30 पेशेंट्स लाए गए हैं, जिसमें से 5 पेशेंट्स जो हैं इस वक्त क्रिटिकल हैं। हमारे इसी शोबा हादसात के अंदर बम धमाका हुआ, हम लोग खुद भी निशाना बने। मॉब्स जब आ जाते हैं, एक उनकी वायलेंस होती है। This was a fight between two groups outside the hospital, and when they were brought into the casualty, one group came into the dressing room. They saw another man lying here on the stretcher, and once they saw him on the stretcher here, they fired him right from this door across by a Kalashnikov. और किसी को नहीं पता कि कौन सा आदमी क्या करके चला जाए। डर तो बहुत लगता है इस जगह में। फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल, मैंने जब अपनी ज़िंदगी में सबसे पहले एक सुसाइड बॉम्बर का डिकैपिटेटेड हेड देखा था। यकीन करें कि मुझे कई रातें नींद नहीं आई उसको देखने के बाद। ज़्यादातर वक्त जो है मैं हस्पताल में ही रही हूँ। बहुत कम वक्त मैंने अपनी फैमिली के साथ गुजारती हूँ। वो भी बड़े प्राइस्ड मोमेंट्स होते हैं। लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि मेरा घर, ये मेरा महकमा ही मेरा घर हो गया, ये हस्पताल ही मेरा घर है। मेरा दिल चाहता था कि मैं सितारों को छू सकूं, और सितारे मैंने नहीं छू सके, लेकिन सितारे छूना वही बात होती है कि आप किसी और के लिए कुछ कर दें। और मुझे अब बड़ी खुशी होती है देख के कि जो आम औरतें शायद इस मुल्क की ना भी कर सकें, मैंने वो करके दिखा दिया।
This is just 4 clips from the 19 or 20 films that I've done in my career. How many people here have seen Saving Grace? And A Girl in the River? Okay, that's good. So, I don't know if you're aware, but A Girl in the River, The Price of Forgiveness is a film that I've just done that won the Academy Award this year, that brings the conversation about honor killings forward. A few positive things about that has happened. We've been working on showing the film to parliamentarians and senators, as well as we've screened it in about 80 places across the country right now. We've taken a break for Ramzan, and the film is going to continue on the road. We are targeting government schools, government colleges. One of the things that is my personal mandate is to take the film into many places where it has not gone. In some places, we are met with stiff resistance. In Peshawar, where we screened the film, we had the boys cheering for the father who tried to kill the daughter, and the girls cheering for the girl who fought back. And the hall was divided with boys sitting on one side and girls sitting on one side. And even though we had the cheering, one of the most heartening things for my team that was doing the screening there was the fact that the girls were trying to out-cheer the boys. And that even though we may not have changed many mindsets that day, we at least emboldened the girls to talk back and to say that this is completely unacceptable. Just day before yesterday, a group of clerics in Pakistan have declared that honor killings is un-Islamic. We have been trying to lobby the clerics since the film has come out. The Prime Minister of Pakistan showed the film to his cabinet, and the law that passed through Senate is now in Parliament that will, in cases of honor killings, for those who don't know, there is a law that allows for forgiveness. But with this new law that is upcoming, the right of forgiveness will be taken away. And the law had come to Parliament, it has lapsed, but I have been just told by email yesterday that the law is coming back into Parliament in the next couple of weeks, and it will get passed. When we did the screening for parliamentarians and senators, I have two incredible anecdotes to share with you. So a number of parliamentarians and senators, this is separate from the Prime Minister screening the film, and a senator came up to me at the beginning and said, "I am deeply critical of your work, Sharmeen." And I said, "I am sure you are, sir, but let us have this conversation after you watch the film." And a parliamentarian from South KPK, which is a very conservative area, came up to me and said that all of this is propaganda. And so the screening began, and as a filmmaker, I like to sit into the screening because I like to see people's faces and see how they are reacting to it. And I sat in for the first 15 minutes and there was zero expressions on everybody else's faces, so I just left. I sat outside and waited. And when the film finished, there was silence, and there was a vote of thanks, and then two hands went up. And the senator and the parliamentarian raised their hands. And I said, "Oh, it's going to be one of those days." Except the senator got up, walked to the front of the room, and said that my film had changed his mind, and that he would champion the film. So I said, "Well, one down, one more to go." The other hand up was the parliamentarian. And the first thing that came out of his mouth was that he is the father of 3 girls, and that I made him realize what a girl goes through, and that him and his political party that were on the fence will champion the bill, and he has been championing the bill. So when people ask me why I make films, I say that I'm not a magician. I don't think that my films are going to fix the issues that I bring forward. But I think that as a filmmaker and as a Pakistani who works in many countries, that my prerogative has always been to bring difficult questions forward. As a society, none of this is going to go away. If I don't talk about honor killings or acid violence, it's not like tomorrow it's going to go away. But a sign of a functioning democracy is when you talk about something, you debate about it on the nightly news, you write editorials about it, you as a country have an important discourse. Then you decide where to move forward. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, we as a country don't speak to each other. We usually shout at each other. It's a speciality. And so I hope that my work, whether people like it or not, it forces them to talk about that issue. So you don't have to agree with me, you don't have to like what I do, but I make you confront and think about an issue that you have not thought about. So, to be honest, and I say this with great pride, before Saving Face came out, acid violence was rarely talked about in Pakistan. If a woman had acid thrown on her face, it would perhaps make it to the inside of a newspaper with 2 or 3 lines. Saving face came out and it became front page news. And I'll tell you why that's important. That's important because then when a woman goes to file a case, a policeman is encouraged and is forced to make sure that that case is registered because the news media is talking about it, people are talking about it. When Saving Face came out, the Punjab government, and Punjab is the province where acid violence takes place the most, made acid violence a crime that would be sped through anti-terrorism courts, which meant that women who were hesitant to go to court because it usually takes about 5 to 7 years for a woman to get justice, started getting justice in 6 to 12 months, which meant that more women were emboldened to go to court. That is a very positive sign. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, Senator Shahid Rahman said that 2,000 women in the last 3 years have been affected by acid violence in the country. And that is a figure that I believe the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan has come up with. Those are just reported figures. But we're hoping that having this discourse, having the public support, is changing narratives because people are going to jail for it now. Every other week you do read about somebody being sentenced to jail. That is a positive step. With a girl in the river, honor killings is something that activists have been working on in Pakistan for decades. Suddenly, an Academy Award helps that everybody was talking about it. It's been on the nightly news, it's in editorials every day, and it came to the national consciousness. Of course, unfortunately, it's also come to the national consciousness because every single day there is an honor killing in the country, if not 2. So the fact that we are debating laws, the fact that we are talking about things, those are all positive signs. And that's why I do what I do. And that's why I encourage people to talk about these issues. Because unfortunately, Pakistan has a national obsession about its image. And everybody is very worried about Pakistan's image internationally. And I say that in this 24-hour news cycle, anything that happens in one country does not get hidden in another country. The internet has made it possible for news from one part of the world to reach another part of the world within seconds. The positive thing is that, and other countries see it, that you recognize you have a problem, because every country has its fair share of problems, and you work on that problem. And that, to me, is what my father told me when I was 17, and I hope to impart to my children. Thank you.
To start off, I was hoping you could elaborate on your journey as a woman from Pakistan. We used to write newspaper articles at the age of 14 to 17, to now have won 2 Academy Awards, 6 Emmys through our filmmaking work. What has the journey been?
Well, it's been amazing. No, it's, people ask me, well, how is it like to be a woman in Pakistan? And I say, well, my greatest asset is that I'm a woman. Because I get to say things that men cannot generally say in Pakistan. And I get to go to places and meet people and get in and out of homes where men wouldn't be able to. So actually, it's a privilege to be a Pakistani woman. And it's a privilege because I have had the opportunity to get an education. It is a privilege because I have a family that encouraged me to get an education. But the only thing that differentiates me and some of the women that I've encountered is that if any of those women had the same education or an opportunity to get an education, the sky would be the limit. I mean, I really do say that, no offense to men, but Pakistan's greatest assets are its women. They're the ones who climb Mount Everest, they're the ones who win Nobel Peace Prize laureates, they just won against India in cricket. So, all of those things combined, I would say that Pakistan's greatest assets are its women right now. And, one of the things that at an early age I told myself was that I would never take no for an answer. So I am not a filmmaker by, I went to school, most Pakistani girls will relate to me, but when you go to school and you tell your parents you want to go to college, they say, well, what is the degree you're going to get? And so the degree that I was going to get was economics and political science, and not filmmaking. And then I went on to do a master's in international relations and communication. And so everything I have learned about filmmaking has been on the field. When I made my first film, I filmed for 1 month, and I sent the tapes back to my producer. And I got this frantic call from my producer, and she said, there is no sound on these tapes, Sharmeen. You forgot to put on the sound. So my very first film was a disaster. I had to go back and refilm many of the things that I was doing. But life's greatest lessons are taught out in the field. And if somebody had told me in 2001 that in 2012 I would win 1 Academy Award in by 2012 and then another one by 2016, I would have laughed, but I wouldn't have said that it's impossible. And this is what I tell young women in Pakistan and anywhere in the world, that the sky is the limit and you should go out and pursue your dreams in the process. Has it come at a high price? Yes, of course it's come at a high price. It is extremely difficult and dangerous to talk about the issues that I talk about. I have had several colleagues, especially in the city that I live in, gunned down. 5 years ago, if you asked me that does being a woman accord you a special privilege in Pakistan in terms of attacks, and I would have said yes. But in the last 2.5 years in Karachi, in the city that I live in, 3 women have been shot to death. 2 of them activists and 1 who's a female politician. There are good things and bad things. But I choose to live in Pakistan and I choose to work over there, and I think that my generation has a special onus to try and fix some of the things.
Thanks. So, as you mentioned, I was going to ask you about the same thing, but you did speak about a bit of it. I was curious. So, having a background in obviously economics, political science, international relations, why did you opt to head into filmmaking? And why did you decide to work on the themes that you do usually work on within your filmmaking?
So I let me start by saying I work on themes, so I have a barometer of anger, and depending on how angry I feel about something, that's the issue that I want to work on. So that's how my topics get decided. These days I'm thinking about what makes me angry next. I also, I think that my degrees in economics and political science and all have informed me better about the world, but also have got, I'm a very big, I do a lot of research, unlike perhaps other filmmakers who are more towards the arts. I spend a lot of time doing research, a lot of time meeting people on the grassroots level and working with them, and I think that has to do with the fact that I've had a degree that has forced me to do that. So actually anything you study in life comes in handy at some point or the other. Filmmaking is something that you can learn in the field, so I've had that good fortune to do that. So the barometer of anger, and plus I've always been a pain in the neck. Ever since I was in school, if you talk to anybody that went to school with me will tell you that I was one of those people. Very irritating. So I continue to be very irritating, except now I'm just irritating to society in general.
Thank you. Your films have been a very powerful message across Pakistan. It means to fight patriarchy across Pakistan, and in this instance, what has been the most difficult thing to get across to while continuing to stand up for the women in the country?
Okay, so the most difficult thing I think has been that even when women continue to get killed or raped or honor killing and all of that there are still people who think that talking about these kind of issues brings shame. It's the same kind of mentality that exists, unfortunately, and I'm sure many people here will silently agree with me, that they know of cousins and family members who are in violent marriages or who want to get a divorce, or who have had an uncle who has been weirdly involved in child sexual abuse but never talk about those issues. because it's just not something we do. We don't talk about these issues. So, and so that mentality of not talking about those issues, that things should just stay at home, that provincial mentality permeates through the national consciousness as well. And actually, not talking about issues is the most unhealthy things a society can do. What makes, and mostly it's men who, unfortunately, but now, recently, I've been working on a film where actually the women are the ones who are, it's like perpetuating a cycle of violence because a woman has gone through it, she's perpetuating that with other women in the family. But that mentality is very hard to deal with. It's hard to deal with because people don't see the abuse, they're more concerned about the reputation. And that means that a woman's life doesn't really matter, because it doesn't matter what she's going through, what matters to you most is how other people see you. And that is about, that's one of the hardest things for me to deal with.
Okay, I'll just move on to something a bit lighter. So you mentioned when you were giving your talk that you have, obviously your family played a big role, they influenced you, your father. Did you have role models, or you have role models in filmmaking, or anyone who inspired you through media, whatever so it may be, that possibly led you in this direction as well? Yeah.
Oh, let me tell you that I only watch romantic comedies. It's very sad. Because I do the kind of work that I do. So maybe we shouldn't be talking about the films I watch. But when I was, I've always, so there's a couple of filmmakers that inspire me a lot. There's a film that was done in Iraq called Iraq in Fragments. If you have not seen it, you should see it. It's a James Langley film. It's a stunning film about a child, a mechanic, and a cleric in Iraq, and that are going through the war. So there are, films that come along that way, but generally, if you ask me what I watch, I see too much kind of hardcore stuff in my life, so I watch mindless, senseless things on television and mindless films. So that's what I. Anything in particular? Anything in particular? No, I've already said way too much.
Okay, so I'll move on to more of your filmmaking itself. I actually saw a song of Lahore last year, and after the filming at the Sydney Film Festival, I met your co-director Andy Shokin. Yeah. And the question kind of relates to what you were discussing earlier as well. He mentioned how he had to he sort of the experiences that he had working with the Sacho Studios ensemble, and you obviously you have such a wide array of documentaries. How has it been for you? What are the emotions you go through, and what do you get out of it aside from the filmmaking? That's something I think that. Yeah.
Okay, so how many people have seen Song of the Heart? So I have some fans in the room. It's Song of the Heart. Firstly, it's my first film about men in Pakistan. That doesn't film them behind bars, because most of my films are like that, unfortunately. But it's a great film about whoever's from Lahore. It's such a beautiful city. We Karachiites have envy, and also because these musicians are so special. So they, especially that film. The musicians taught me to be very patient, because I start my days at 7 or 8 a.m. and the musicians start their day at 6 or 7 p.m. We would always have the AM/PM problems. But to me, those musicians and the relationship with those musicians was so fantastic, because they reminded me of a Pakistan that my grandparents and perhaps my parents at an early age experienced, where there were bands on the streets, where there were clubs and cabarets and people performed openly. And unfortunately, my generation and your generation has seen much less of that. So while making that film, it's a journey about a group of musicians from Pakistan who become an internet sensation. They play jazz and they get called to New York by Wynton Marsalis, who is one of the kings of jazz in America, and they played 2 sold-out concerts. But the greatest thing about that film is that when they went to New York, both Andy and I were having heart attacks because the musicians cannot read music, and it was very cold, it was November, and the musicians don't speak any English, and they had 3 days of rehearsals with this big brass band from New York that performs music very differently. And in those 3 days of rehearsals, not once, and I'm talking about not once, did they play any of the tracks in their whole. Because each time they'd start playing it, somebody would make a mistake and they would move on to the next one. And so, you know, as a filmmaker, you make films and you're like, this film, the ending, I know what the ending is going to be. This was one of those films that I was making where I was like, I don't think this film is ever going to get made. Because I would, every day in the rehearsals, I would see the look on the faces of the Pakistani musicians and they would say, it'll be fine. And I would say, what do you mean? How can it be fine? You have not performed one song together and you have a concert in front of 2,500 people. And they said, don't worry about it. Anyway, so we were very worried. But the day of the concert comes and they get onto the stage and honestly I couldn't breathe because I was like, imagine if something was wrong and it's live. And then when they started playing, it was as if they were just meant to play forever. And not one single mistake, and standing ovation. And it was one of those beautiful moments as a Pakistani where you're standing at the Jazz at Lincoln Center, you have thousands of people who are standing to their feet and they are clapping for musicians that come from where you are. It was very, very special. And so, you know, when they got off the stage, they looked at me, they all laughed because they had seen how white I was, and they said, told you. And so it was just, you know, one of those moments as a filmmaker. So I love making films where people teach me things. 3 films in my life where people have taught me something is these musicians have taught me that music, you read in newspapers, you read everywhere, music is a universal language, you say, yeah, okay, I get it, it sounds great, but music is a universal language. I mean, I saw these musicians, literally, who have zero connections to any of these other musicians, who play instruments that are completely different. These musicians count music on their fingers. They don't read music. And they played the biggest jazz hall, and their music harmoniously blended in with the Jazz at Lincoln Center band. It was just beautiful. The second film that I made that taught me something is I made a film in 2014 about transgenders in Pakistan. I spent a lot of time with the transgender community. We have a very vibrant transgender community in Pakistan. They are very special people. And they taught me something I'll never forget. So, you know, for most of us who grew up in Pakistan, when we look at a transgender, we usually imagine them, you know, to be the people who knock on our windows to beg, or the women who dance at weddings, or when there's a wedding going on, they miraculously arrive outside and they find their way there. The transgender community taught me, so I was told, you know, I always thought that it was a choice. So before I made the film, I had this naive impression that it's a choice. You choose to live this kind of life. And very early on, Sana, who is a dancer in my film, turns to me and says, which person would choose this life? The life chose us. We didn't want to be women, but this is how we feel. And look at what we go through. You think anybody would choose this life? To be abandoned by their family, to have to beg on the streets. And it really did, it changed the way I see transgenders. So yeah, you know, those are some of the experiences that I've had in my life that have changed the way I look at things.
We know you have worked heavily on the documentary films, but however, last year you directed and produced the first computer animated feature film of Pakistan, Pin Bahadur. Why did you decide on pursuing such a different direction?
because I really needed a break. I grew up in Pakistan, where I grew up with PTV, one television channel in the country, and when I used to put on PTV, there was still programming for children. So there was still, we had a number of puppet shows, we had a number of singing shows, and they were for children, and they were, you know, they were from our part of the world. But now, the children that are growing up in Pakistan, they only get to watch stuff that comes from Disney or Pixar, or stuff that comes from regional countries. But, you know, and we have very little original programming for children, and so children have no heroes. Nobody on screen looks like them. And so 3 years now, or 4 years ago, I decided, just like the way when I decided I wanted to make a documentary film, I decided, well, I'm going to make an animated feature film. And I know nothing about animation, so I started working on it. I wrote a story, began working on it, assembled a team together, and when I started, nobody would believe that I would be able to make it. And I had just won my first Academy Award, so I said, oh, it's going to be so easy, I'm going to raise money for it, it's going to happen. Nobody gave me money. And most people just laughed. So I just did, well, so I would make the documentary films and I would put in all whatever little bit of money and ask my family and everybody, and we kind of started making the film. And 2 years into making the film, because it takes years to make animated films, I was very fortunate. I took the film out into the market. I came up with my own marketing model, and we managed to raise money in the market in Pakistan. We managed to get 3 sponsors to sponsor the film. When the film came out, you know, the animation industry in Pakistan is heavily, it basically relies on outsourcing. It's an outsourcing market, so people, so for example, somebody in Singapore or somebody in Dubai or somebody in LA will tell them, here is one scene, why don't you create the scene and send it back. But it's also run by men. So 5 months before I finished my first animated film, a rival, I don't think they're rivals, but anyway, a rival company offered to pay my employees double the salary of what they were making, just so that my film would not come out. And so overnight, while I was pregnant, I lost 6 of my best people with 5 months to go for the film to come out. Anyway, so we went on, persevered, found other people, the film came out. It quickly became the highest grossing animated feature film, beating Frozen and Rio 2, which had previously held you know, the box office. So 4.5 crores, which is about $450,000, was the box office for Rio 2, I believe, and we made $650,000 on the box office. So it was huge, and we are now releasing Teen Bahadur Part 2 at the end of this year, and we're about to announce a second animated feature series that we are taking out for children that deals with animals. And so that will be out hopefully next year as well.
Thank you. So I have heard about the issues the movie tackles, and very much in the line of the sort of topics you work on. But it's still a really funny movie for children, obviously. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about the themes in the movie.
So with Teen Bahadur, I was able to say a lot of things that I generally can't say because, you know, it's animated things. So we talked a lot about corruption, we talked about political leaders, we talked about change, we talked about how communities can come together. And it's actually quite a funny film, so for those who haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch it. The idea was to use humor to bring children to understand issues. The film has 3 main characters, a young woman and 2 boys, and the story centers around a city which was a city of light at one point and then became a city of darkness, and how the children fight back to get that city to become the city of light again. And so it's quite very reminiscent of Karachi.
So now moving away from your filmmaking, could you tell us more about the projects like Citizen Pakistan Archive in Pakistan, which I am sure a lot of audience would know is an NGO. What projects are you developing with this organization?
So I don't. So I'm a chair of the Citizens Archive of Pakistan, but I don't run it anymore. But I'll just tell everybody that in 2007, a group of us got together to create Pakistan's first oral history archive and photography archive. We now have the largest oral history and photography and newspaper archive in Pakistan. We have been in existence for 12 years. We have over 1,800 interviews collected of oral histories of Pakistanis, many of them who were the first Pakistanis who came across into Pakistan from India, and also Pakistanis that lived in this part of Pakistan. And we run the oral history archive in 3 cities. We are about to put up Pakistan's first interactive museum in the country, which is going to be in Lahore. The announcement will be coming very soon. One in Karachi is going to follow suit. We have been working on interactive, we have always had interactive exhibits. I don't know if any of you have seen them, but we've done many across the country. We also run one of the largest exchange students program with India called Exchange for Change. We are also now running it with the United States called Exchange for Change USA. And our archives are open to researchers. Harvard University is collaborating with us. Their South Asian group is using our archive. We've had a number of professors, students working on research using our archive as well. So our hope is that we have created an independent source of information. We have digitized 40 years of newspapers. It's very hard to find these newspapers in the country because they lie in the basement that is often flooded in government libraries. And so the idea is that this first museum will be an interactive museum, but it will also have a archive area where researchers can go sit down and use the archive. In Karachi, our office is a part-time archive as well. So I encourage those of you who are studying South Asia, if you're ever interested, you should go and check out the work the Citizens Archive of Pakistan is doing.
Okay, we just have a few more questions before we open it up to the audience. So recently you were appointed, I think, the honorary ambassador for blood safety by the Pakistani government. So that's one of the things. And along with that, what other projects do you have or sort of roles that you're currently working on away from the filmmaking?
I serve as the SARC ambassador for HIV/AIDS, which I do a lot of work on and speak about. I also am working on blood safety. So for those of you who don't know, Pakistan has a huge issue with blood transfusions. It's because we have a very archaic system of, so if something happens to you, you go to the hospital, you have to find somebody in an emergency situation to donate the exact amount of blood that you are taking from the system. So instead of worrying about whether you're going to survive, to worry about finding a relative that matches your blood to get blood. It's the craziest system. So so now in this hospital in Karachi has started an independent blood bank, and they're now working to emulate that across the country. And I have become a big champion of what they do because I've seen firsthand how I'm literally transforming people's lives. So I've been doing a lot of work on that and working on that, and I'm also working on there's a white ribbon campaign in Pakistan on domestic violence and violence against women. Which I am working on, and I have been working on curriculum reform in Pakistan for 10 years now. I've compiled, of course the professor here would know, but I've compiled all of those things that we should all be very proud about in our textbooks, and hopefully we can at some day change that. So I've been doing a study on that, and I'm hoping to work on a film actually. A short film that humorously looks at what we teach our children.
This one is about future. It's a bit hard. Think Bahadur, The Revenge of Baba Balam, which of course is the sequel movie of the first film. And it's coming out towards the end of the year. So what can you share with us about the movie?
Team Bahadur, the second one what we've done is quite cool. We bought some of so again, a lot of people here won't know 50-50, but 50-50 was a very humorous television show, and we bought some of the actors from 50-50 back for Team Bahadur Part 2. So some of the humorous characters in Team Bahadur Part 2 is from there, including Shehnaz, who, if you've never seen her in 50-50, you should. And she is playing the parrot. So we have a parrot, we have a dog, we have these Team Bahadurs, and we have these very funny, the bad guys, but they're bumbling idiots. They're very funny. So this story is about how the Team Bahadur break up and kind of their fight to get back.
Okay. So just last question. I don't know if you can, but if you would like to share some information about some other projects of yours that may be coming up, particularly in the documentary side of things.
Yeah. So I have a film actually that's just released. It's about the world's first all-women all-Muslim peacekeeping unit from Bangladesh. Women from Bangladesh were stationed in Haiti and Congo.
I think it's screening.
Yeah, it's screening today at 7:15 at the film festival, and this is its second screening. So that's my new film that's out, and I am working on another project. Actually, this film is in America. But it's a film about sports in America. It's very different. But sports and human rights, because we're never too far away from that. But I haven't made an announcement about it because it's a fairly contentious film to be making. But everyone will know about it in a couple of months.
Now we'll conclude this question answer session, and I would like to give it to Sushant to conclude the
Thank you, Sharmeen. Can we get a round of applause, please?